Does Posse Comitatus apply to state or federal guard? The Posse Comitatus Act, enacted in 1878, is a United States federal law that limits the use of the military in domestic law enforcement. This law was primarily designed to prevent the federal government from using the armed forces to enforce civilian laws, particularly in the southern states during the Reconstruction era. However, the application of this act raises interesting questions when it comes to the National Guard and state military forces. The National Guard operates under both state and federal authority, depending on the circumstances. When the National Guard is under state control, it is typically used for local emergencies, disaster response, and law enforcement assistance. In this capacity, the Posse Comitatus Act does not apply because the National Guard is considered a state entity, and states have the authority to deploy their own forces as they see fit. However, when the National Guard is federalized, it comes under the command of the President of the United States and is subject to federal laws, including the Posse Comitatus Act. In this scenario, the use of National Guard troops for domestic law enforcement purposes would be restricted. The federal government can call upon the National Guard for various missions, including overseas deployments, but using these troops for civilian law enforcement at home is limited by the Posse Comitatus Act. State Guard units, which are separate from the National Guard, operate solely under state authority and are not subject to the Posse Comitatus Act. These units can be utilized for law enforcement and other state-specific duties without the restrictions imposed by federal law. In summary, the Posse Comitatus Act primarily applies to the federal military forces and, by extension, the National Guard when it is under federal control. State Guard units, on the other hand, are not affected by this law and can be deployed for law enforcement and other state purposes as determined by state law. Understanding these distinctions is crucial for grasping the legal framework surrounding military involvement in domestic affairs.